more later. And the reason we are doing this is that obviously we have seen in our work with kids that there has been basically a global problem in that tech has developed, ignoring children and ignoring their established rights that many people fought very, very hard for in the past century. And suddenly we have a new world order and these are being trampled upon. And it's a global problem because young kids are using the same technology all around the world and living very similar experiences and similar risks and similar harms. Luckily, there is a global solution. So global problem, global solution, and we are working towards global norms for tech design to ensure, as I said, that those established rights are taken into account in the digital environment. So today, AI. So what we see is something which is maybe not fundamentally new, but which is supercharging some of these harms and systemic problems that we have already been addressing. And we are looking indeed for, as I say, global standards and a way of addressing this. Luckily, there is clearly a rising understanding and convergence of what we need to do and rising political will to address these issues, in particular for children based on their established rights. How are we going to do it? Well, I am very, very pleased to today be joined by a very distinguished panel of experts and also young people who can help us define some of the things that we need to take forward, in particular, as this event is an official preparatory event for the Paris AI Action Summit. And so we are looking for tangible, practical solutions to the issues we face. I am going with that to hand over for some opening words to our first speaker, Nidhi. Now, Nidhi is a Five Rights Youth Ambassador, 16 years old, from Malaysia, and there she is. Hello, Nidhi. It's lovely to see you with us today. Nidhi is a very passionate advocate for children's rights in the digital environment, has represented children and Five Rights around the world, including, I think, previously at an IGF. Nidhi, so this is your second time at the IGF. Welcome back. Nidhi is also an author. She hosts her own podcast and is also one of the hosts and the first host of the Five Rights Youth Voice podcast, Check This Out. So with that, Nidhi, over to you. Tell us from your perspective, what's happening and what needs to be done.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Leanda, so much for such a kind introduction. I'll repeat, my name is Nidhi Ramesh, and as a child rights activist in the digital space, I'm so honored to be here today and to be able to share my views and opinions on how AI impacts young people like me all over the world and what I believe we can do to ensure its responsible use. Before I begin with my own experience, I think it's key to highlight that AI is on every single platform, mobile application, and website that we all use. When someone says AI, the first thing one might think of is about generative artificial intelligence, Gen AI, apps like ChatGPT, Copilot, Jasper AI, Replica, and many others. We live in a world where AI is everywhere, but most of us can't even tell when we're interacting with it. Whether it's through social media algorithms, voice assistants, or personalized learning tools, AI often works in the background, shaping our decisions and experiences. Many children don't realize that most of their interactions with the online world might actually be through various AI algorithms, making choices, recommendations, and even decisions for them. What's even more concerning is the misuse of AI by tech companies that put profit above children's safety and privacy, from recommending harmful and addictive content to collecting data without consent. Many AI systems operate without safeguards for young people. Most children don't even know they're being exposed to these algorithms, let alone how to protect themselves from potential harm. That said, I don't want to paint AI as the villain. AI, when implemented in platforms and used responsibly, has incredible potential. In education, for instance, it's transforming how we learn. AI-powered tools can provide personalized resources, making learning accessible and inclusive. For children with disabilities or those in remote areas, this is a real game changer. But while these benefits are real, so are the risks, and we can't afford to ignore them. One major concern is the erosion of originality. AI is flooding the internet with self generated content, making it harder to find authentic human created work. As someone who runs a podcast, I know firsthand how much effort goes into creating something original. My podcast aims to highlight social issues and children's rights in an attempt to spread awareness on topics that are important to me. This also means that I spend a long time researching topics, writing scripts, recording audio, editing, and more in order to publish a full episode. It's a process that takes time and effort. Yet, in this day and age, with the click of a button, one can easily find AI algorithms that can use any topic you give it and generate a compelling script in seconds. As well as that, other Gen AI applications like iSpeech, Descript, Murph, etc., use imported clips of your voice to perfectly imitate what you sound like when you give it this AI generated script. So, in a way, these two AI programs can do what I spend hours and days working on in seconds. And while that might seem convenient, it undermines the value of creativity and hard work that we put in. And this isn't just about me, it's about every artist, writer, and musician who's at risk of being replaced by similar. I've also written and published 2 books, like Leanda said, but again, easy for AI to write or create something similar at just a simple command, undermining so many creators out there who want to share their work with people. Perhaps this example is more relevant to me as an individual. However, the risks and problems that arise for AI are still there and need to be addressed, especially the ones I mentioned at the start. So, what do we do about this? How do we ensure that AI works for children and not against them? I believe policymakers and tech companies have a huge role to play. First and foremost, we need stronger laws and regulations around AI governance on social media platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat. These systems must prioritize data protection and privacy, especially for children. Young people deserve to know when AI is being used and what information it's collecting. Transparency isn't optional, it's essential. We also need AI systems designed with children's well-being at their core. This means algorithms that promote safety and mental health rather than exploiting vulnerabilities for profit. Tech companies must be held accountable for the impact their systems have on young minds. Baroness Vivian Kidron and Five Rights, the organization I have the huge honor of being a part of, is currently working on designing and bringing together more regulations on this, which I'm sure will be discussed later as the panel continues. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nidhi. I should have just let you go from the start because you say it so much better than I ever could. I hope you'll stay with us because I'm sure our audience in the room and online will have questions and would like to interact with you more afterwards. But we are going to move on to our second panelist, Dr. Jun Sao, who's joining us from Oxford. Hi, Jun. Great to see you. Dr. Jun Sao is a senior researcher in the Department of Computer Science at Oxford University. Her research focuses on investigating the impact of algorithm-based decision-making on our everyday lives, especially when it regards families and young children. For this, Jun takes a human-centric approach, focusing on understanding users' needs in order to design technologies that can make a real impact. Jun currently leads the Oxford Child-Centered AI Design Lab and a major research grant examining the challenges of supporting children's digital agency in the age of AI. So, Jun, thank you for joining us. Can you tell us what's the research telling us then about the impact of AI on children?
Well, thank you so much for the introduction, Liana. Can I just confirm that everyone can hear me all right? I presume that sounds all right.
Thumbs up, Jun.
All right. Okay, so I got some slides prepared. Can I project them? Can people see that? I'm also very happy just to talk about the research.
See them, Jun.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to be here. I wish I could be there in person, but I'm very much with you, all of you guys, in spirit. It's shocking to hear Nidhi's talk and presentation and how much it resonates with our research evidence. As Nidhi said, AI is everywhere in children's life, from the moment they were born and to the education systems they would be using at home or at school. And we see a very similar number of wide adoption of these technologies if you look at the survey in any countries. And also, as Nidhi said, AI, the rise of AI, children are rapidly embracing these new technologies. Our recent survey in the UK shows that children are twice as likely to adopt these new technologies than adults. And an earlier survey by the Internet Matters also shows that there's such a huge proportion of children in the UK are using Gen AI technologies to help with their schoolwork. So it's really exciting. And, as Nidhi said, there's a lot of great, exciting opportunities, especially AI could be used to support children with their learning, children with special education needs, who needs actual support with their social emotional management. We also see some really exciting examples to see how AI could help children, providing them with better health opportunities, early diagnosis of autism, which is an issue in many countries in the world. But also, we must be cautious about how all these technologies may or may not have been designed with children's best interests in mind. So this is the slide showed a recent research we did last year, where we did a systematic review of about 200 pieces of work from the human-computer interaction research community, which is a community pride themselves in designing for human in the heart of the design process. And we try to analyze how AI has been used in different kind of application domains for children. It was quite interesting to see how education and healthcare has been the most dominant application areas, as well as interestingly keeping children safe online. And now we looked more closely into the range of personal data that's being used to feed all these algorithms. And we were quite surprised to see the diverse range of really sensitive data, like genetic data, like behavior data, could be routinely used by all these AI systems, but not necessarily with full consent or assent from children, or even necessary for the function of those applications. And it's also interesting when we did a review of all the current AI ethics principles out there last year, and we tried to do a mapping of all these recommended ethical principles to the actual implementations. And as everyone can see in this diagram, it's a very sparsely populated table. So even basic principles like privacy, like safety, like meeting children's developmental needs are rarely considered comprehensively in all these applications that are designed for children and often in a very critical area. So this is quite concerning to see how principles are applied in experimental settings. And it's even more concerning when we see practices taking place in real-world cases in commercial settings. So this is quite an old report from 2007 with the early rise of smart home devices, smart toys. Researchers have identified very quickly serious implications, the safety risks associated with these cute cuddly bears. But 7 years on, many legislations have been developed since then, but it was quite interesting to see so has the rise of the variety of IoT devices and smart home devices. A recent study by us, as well as many other recent studies, have shown that children's data can be collected by all these devices, even when they are online or offline. As one of the researchers from a recent privacy conference confessed, individual children probably won't experience negative consequences due to toys creating profiles about them. But nobody really knows that for sure. So here is another example to see, similar to the biases adults would be subject to, children can also be exposed to unfair decisions by AI systems, simply due to their race or socioeconomic status, but often probably with much more lasting effects in critical situations such as criminal decision making. Rapid development of AI is often associated with rapid deployment, but ironically, not always with sufficient safeguarding in the process of design. For example, when chatbot-like technologies were deployed by Snapchat last year, some serious risks were immediately reported, exposing children to inappropriate content and contact, even when they declared their only age of 13 or 15. So another thing that is quite interesting in our research is we found that although a lot of risks like privacy and safety have been extensively discussed in existing AI policies, the exploitative nature of AI algorithms has been rarely discussed. When we began our research with children's data privacy, we began with the experiment of analyzing third-party data tracking behaviors of over 1 million apps from Google Play Store. One of the most shocking discoveries we found from this study is the prevalence of data tracking existence with the cute apps used by children, often very, very young children, when they learn how to begin their handwriting, how to pop a balloon so that they can develop their fine motor skills. This is such a direct violation of children's basic rights and their vulnerabilities. So 7 years on since our initial research, what has happened, GDPR happened. We repeated our study. It was quite interesting to see that the tracking behavior did not change immediately at the enforcement of legislation. But what did happen is the App Store has made it extremely difficult for us to repeat and continue our data analysis. But what we haven't stopped is to continue asking the question, why all this tracking of children's data and how we can better protect them. It's interesting to see this recent study published earlier this year, where it provides even more firm evidence about the exploitation of children's data. The proportion of large social media platforms rely on children's attention for their advertisement revenue. So just like Nidhi said, these companies are not designing with children's best interest in heart, but their market gains. Several recent studies have made similar findings showing that recommendation systems can actively amplify and direct children to harmful content. For example, here the studies have shown that children identified with mental health issues could be more likely exposed to posts leading to more mental health risks. Harmful content is prioritized because it's more attention grabbing, invoking stronger emotions, and prolong children's engagement. So many of these studies are actually conducted through simulations because researchers do not access to the platform APIs or the code of the algorithms. But what happens when we talk to the children directly and ask them about their experiences? This is one of the studies that we conducted last year, and the message is consistent with many other research studies out there. Children found the experience very passive and disrespectful. And many of them find it unfair that systems can do this to their data and manipulate their experiences. And while such feelings of being exploited and disrespected can be hard to quantify, we must not neglect how these feelings are fundamentally disrespectful of children's rights in many ways, and how the same algorithmic practices could cause different degrees of harm for children of different developmental stages or vulnerabilities. And I'll just leave the evidence discussions here for now and for other speakers, because I think the fundamental phenomenons we have lots of evidence for the fundamental phenomenons, but it will be quite interesting to hear that how the recent EU AI Act could or could not provide the much needed protection that we need for children of this generation. Thank you very much, Liana.
Thank you so much, Jen. I am going to step over here, so I'm in frame. Thank you so much for that presentation of some of the overwhelming evidence. And I think if you had a little bit longer, you could have said an awful lot more. I'd like to also point people to some of the research done by Five Rights. I have Disrupted Childhood here, which sets out some of the basics of persuasive design, and also the pathways research using avatars shows very clearly how algorithms drive children to very specific harms. And of course, there's plenty of evidence from a number of court cases as well of children who to talk about the AI Act. And I am delighted to welcome the Honourable Member of the European Parliament. Maybe we're over here, is that? No, apparently the camera needs to see you. So yes, so Mr. Brando Benifei, who was co-rapporteur of the AI Act in the European Parliament and currently chair of the Oversight Monitoring Group. So absolutely critical role to make sure that the AI Act delivers, and co-chair also of the Child Rights Intergroup in the European Parliament. We're absolutely delighted to have you here.
Yeah, I'm really happy I can be here for this opportunity. I'm sorry that due to the overlapping with another meeting, I have to attend because of the Parliament program. We have a good delegation here. I will need to leave soon after my intervention. Maybe if there is one question I can answer, but otherwise I will let the panel continue. But I want to thank Five Rights Foundation also for the extremely useful contributions that were given during the drafting process of the AI Act. The original text from the European Commission was unfortunately lacking completely the dimension of child protection. It was not there at all. So we had to bring it in with amendments from the European Parliament, with our drafting work and the negotiations that followed. So we have some specific dimension of child protection inside the AI Act, not as much as we wanted, but there are also some more general provisions that can be applied effectively, if we want to apply them effectively, on the cases that we just heard of. That's why it's important that now the Parliament, in the new mandate that just started just a few months ago, both confirmed the existence of the child intergroup, children's rights intergroup. As I said, I'm now I will be the vice chair for that. It starts its work now in the new mandate, and it's important because it's a very important forum to bring together all the MEPs that from different perspectives, all the parliamentarians that want to work on children's rights. And we confirmed a monitoring group of the AI Act. So after approving the text, now we are following step by step its application. It will be crucial because some of the issues that you have been already talking about with the previous speakers are to be checked in the way they are applied. For example, in February 2025 already, we will see the full mandatoriness, the full application of the prohibitions. That it's a very important aspect of the AI Act. And among the prohibited uses, there are also emotion recognition in the study places. We wanted to avoid that, to in fact enter into a form of pressure and intrusion on children in schools. So this is one aspect, for example. But then also predictive policing that can target minors from certain minorities will be prohibited. And also we prohibit the indiscriminate use of AI-powered biometric cameras in live action in a way that will prevent forms of surveillance that can also infringe the privacy and the protection of children. And we have, for example, prohibit also the facial scraping on the internet. So that's something that is used to in fact prepare generative AI or chatbots to commit some of the abuses that we have seen. And we are trying to protect this data. But also, apart from the prohibitions that will kick in soon, we have very important transparency provisions that will be quite important, looking at the generative AI. And for example, we demand specific protocols by the generative AI developers to contrast the capabilities of these systems to have this kind of inappropriate conversations that we have seen, that has been exemplified earlier, and the production of inappropriate content that can be offensive for children. This is something that needs to be entrenched in the way the system is trained, and it's limited and needs to be checked periodically. But also, we want to label AI-generated content. This is crucial to find another issue that was not very much touched until now in this discussion, which I think it's very important, is fighting cyberbullying, cyber mistreatment of children, which is a very important source of mental disorders, of attacking mental health. And in fact, with the new systems of generative AI, you can have a totally new level of extremely damaging cyberbullying of all kinds. And this is something we also need to tackle by avoiding the production, but when the thing is there, at least it needs to be clear that this is not true, that is fake. And so people cannot be induced to think that a person is doing or saying things that will make them feel ashamed and have mental health problems. And also, finally, I want to underline that this work, I could make also more examples about how the AI interacts, but I want to concentrate on the fact that this interacts also with Digital Services Act and with the child sexual abuse material legislation that we have been developing, that has been pushed forward by the European Union, and we think that the ecosystem needs to work together. As I said, I'm the specialist of the AI Act. I've been working on that. But in fact, you put that together with Digital Services Act, with this new legislation on child sexual abuse, and you can build a proper framework of protection. And in fact, we want to continue a global dialogue. We are working on that. I am doing that with different governments and parliaments so that we can build a common framework of action. And that's why it's very important that civil society foundations, organizations can build links that are not only between the governments, but also in civil society. And I insist that the parliamentarians have to do their part. Here, it's important that we have the IGF parliamentary track that also dealt in one of the discussions about these topics, and we need to continue developing in this direction. We hope we can give some good practices by the application of this legislation, but clearly we need to continue learning from each other and building together an apparatus of actions and legislation, soft and hard laws that can protect our children online. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Brando. I know you have to leave. Do you still have time for another question or anything from the room? Okay. Does anyone have a burning question, Mr. Benifei? I would have lots of questions, but I'll have to keep them.
Well, my name is Peter Zanga Jackson Jr. I'm from Liberia, from the regulator. Firstly, thank you for the explanation you gave. But I want to ask you, because the child that we are talking about, they are from the family, and the family is the fundamental of that child. There are in some homes, there's no check when it comes to the child being on the internet. Some family, no monitoring. So don't you think there should be an awareness? Firstly, educate the families as to what they should do to limit their child or children to some extent before going to the next level of trying to detect giants that develop all of these AR into order. And so my concern is more on the family. What do you think the family can do as a father to protect their children, but to protect our children first? Protection of our children should start from us first. Yeah. Before we go outside to find solution. This is my question.
Is it working? You can hear? Okay. So just to answer very quickly on this, I think it's a very important topic because um, uh, we need families to be ready to do their part in this education, because it's not only about laws, obviously, I concentrated on that, but it's also building a culture. And this means you need to give the instruments to the adults to be able to have a informed conversation with their children. So I don't think we will solve everything by giving instruments to the adult population. We need schools, we need the formal education targeted at children through the institutions. But obviously, if we have a more conscious population, also of the older age, that is not digital native, that needs to be trained, then they can also transmit to their children some basic foundational elements on how you can be healthy and protected and conscious and not be manipulated while you are using new technologies, AI, the internet. So yes, we also need the families to be on board. And we cannot solve everything with that, but at the same time, without investing also in the families, I think we are missing an important piece. I completely agree with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brando. We wish you the best of luck in overseeing the AI Act implementation. And we'll be telling you about what comes from this panel, which is relevant to that later. And I'd just like to say, our friend left the room, but I'd like to say that the European Parents Association was very much behind a lot of the work done on the AI Act. They have been big drivers of this. Now, over to our next speaker, Dr. Ansgar Kinner, who is AI Ethics and Public Policy Regulatory Lead at Ernst & Young. I probably made your title even longer than it actually is, because it's already quite long. So Ansgar, we are delighted to have as a trustee of the Five Rights Foundation, is our vice chair of our board, and an absolute expert in AI and working a lot on the technical standards that are needed for, among others, the implementation and enforcement of the AI Act. So Ansgar, we're going to hear from you a little bit about the status quo in terms of what we have to get this kind of regulation, and also things like the AI Convention and the framework that came from the UN a few months ago. So there are a few things, the AI Act being maybe one of the most powerful ones there. So a few words from you. What we'd like to hear about is indeed, what is the status quo in terms of actually making this real? What's missing? Where do we go from here?
Sure. Same check as everyone else. Can you hear me? Okay, good. So yes, we're definitely in a very interesting period with the introduction of new international charters like the Council of Europe's Charter on AI, legislation like the AI Act, but also various other initiatives in other jurisdictions that are pushing either through mandatory obligations around safeguards for AI, or are putting on the table an expectation from the regulator that they're saying, we expect you to follow voluntary codes around responsible use of AI. And certainly we have seen, if we look at the types of organizations that you are with, that the introduction of these types of regulations has pushed forward the level of engagement, the level of resources also that are provided within organizations, be it public or private sector organizations, to actually and make sure that if we think especially about the way in which these types of regulations apply and have are as they are AI, there is a large challenge for a lot of organizations. There is a large challenge for a lot of organizations, similar to what we've seen in the platform space, that the organizations are often not quite aware to what extent what they are doing actually impacts on children. Similar as what we've seen with social media platforms and other online platforms, that when they created the space, they were building the space not with children in mind, they were building the space with adults in mind, even though in reality we know that a huge proportion of the users of these platforms are children. They did not even conceive that this is something that they need to be building for. And a similar challenge is in the AI space, especially as in the AI space, as it is moving to a model where we have creators of the core AI models, LLMs being a prime example of that, being separate from the deployers of the AI models that then integrate them into their systems, that there is a disconnect between those who have the capacity to actually understand and do something about compliance, also compliance with regards to aspects regarding children, that they're different from the ones that are directly facing the users. And even often those that are directly facing the users are not sufficiently tracking and aware of who exactly their users are. So if the AI Act asks for, prohibits a subliminal manipulation of vulnerable groups, but the deployers and especially the providers are not even aware that young people as a vulnerable group are a user of the platform, then of course they are challenged in knowing whether or not they are subliminally manipulating them, or if they are having a negative impact on them, and they don't even understand what does a negative impact on young people mean. This reflects then on some of the work that has been happening in the standardization space. So last year, the IEEE published a standard, which Five Rights was a prime contributor to, the IEEE 2089 standard on age-appropriate design. And one of the things that that standard actually asks for is that organizations, as they are engaging in the design and development of AI systems, that they have people within that development process who are subject matter experts with regards to the impacts that these systems can have on children. So that there is someone at least involved in the process that thinks about how could this kind of a system impact children? What are the potential challenges, the potential negative impacts that could arise if someone under 18, let alone someone under 10, is using these kinds of systems. However, the standardization space is also still very immature. It is a space that is still very much in flux, in development. If we think, for instance, around the standards that are meant to provide the clear operational guidance on how to become compliant with the AI Act, all of those standards are still in development. The European standards bodies, CEN and CENELEC, are rushing to try to meet the the deadline that the AI Act has set to be able to provide these standards. And because they are rushing, they are focusing at the high level, horizontal level. There are very few contributors that can really add an understanding as to the particulars that are necessary to address concerns regarding children. Five Rights is participating in the process, but there are multiple standards being developed simultaneously. It is highly challenging to be contributing to all of these at the same time, to make sure that the risk management standard considers the risks to children at the same time as the trustworthiness standard considers what does accuracy, what does robustness with regards to how children might use an AI system actually mean. So the technical space around how do we move from a high level intended outcome, which the regulations have specified, into an operational, what do you need to do on the ground to make sure that the systems work to meet those requirements, is still a space that needs a lot of support, it needs a lot of work. And as I've said, there is even the core challenge that organizations need to be aware that they even need to consider how children might be impacted by these systems as they're deploying something, a new chatbot, as they're deploying AI as part of a system for targeting advertising, as they're using AI as part of something like a fitness app or something like that. They're generally not building it with children in mind. And so it is a space that is dynamic. It is a space that is moving in the right direction to the extent that it has been integrated in the AI Act, for instance, as Brando mentioned. However, because there are so many new things, new compliance activities, new thinking about what does responsible AI actually mean, all happening at the same time, while there's also a huge rush to try to find new ways to actually get a return on investment on these, that there is a huge risk that the particular concerns around children will fall between the cracks if we do not raise enough awareness about this.
Thank you so much, Ansgar. I think we're going to have our last intervention and then engage in a discussion, if that is okay. This one's not working? Is it working? Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. Indeed, I think it's absolutely critical that, law is already something, but we need to get down into the weeds to get those technical frameworks in place, because otherwise companies can say things like, oh, well, we didn't know that we were exploiting children's vulnerabilities. We didn't know that children were there. We are not designing for children. Why do we need to cater for children? The reality, of course, I mean, I'm being a little bit provocative, but the reality, of course, is that many of the biggest companies, at the very least, are quite aware that children are a massive market. They are targeting children as their current market and their future market. So, of course, it's a little bit disingenuous, but until we get all of that detail in place, then that is a game that we will be playing. So, absolutely critical. Thank you so much for that. We have just our last intervention online from Baroness Biban Kidron, who is the chair of Five Rights Foundation. Baroness Kidron is a member of the House of Lords in the UK and was the architect of the age-appropriate design code. Baroness Kidron has been a long-term advocate of children's rights and is currently working on an AI code, which hopefully will feed in to some of the things that we've been speaking about. So Baroness Kidron, over to you.
without having to stick heavy instruments on their paper-thin chests. Terre des Hommes, a fellow children's rights NGO, recently launched an AI chatbot to support children's access to justice. Or a few months ago, I met a wonderful group of 14-year-old girls who built an app to teach sign language to hearing classmates so that they could all communicate with their deaf peer. There is no doubt that AI holds immense potential. But like any technology, AI must be developed with children in mind. And I do want to emphasize that it's a design choice if recommender systems feed children alarming content promoting eating disorders or self-harm. It's a design choice if AI-powered chatbots encourage emotional attachments, which may, in some cases, have led to children taking their own lives. It's a design choice if cynically some of those chatbots revive deceased children through the creation of AI bots imitating their personalities, re-traumatizing their families and friends, and creating a loop in which self-harm or suicide is valorized. As children point out to us repeatedly, we are all increasingly interacting with AI systems without even being aware of it. It occurs across all domains of life, from education to healthcare, picking the ripest tomatoes for baked beans. Few would argue against the efficiencies or learning from AI and big data, but putting systems into the wild in a gold rush for AI dominance, or where governments using AI to streamline public services is not instead of meeting the needs of children, it must be as well. For example, if making welfare decisions based on the understanding of AI results in children going hungry because of bias in the system, that is unacceptable. And while that seems obvious, that has already happened in 2 countries, to my knowledge, and may well have happened in many more. Thinking ahead, designing systems that consider children by design and default is how AI, just like any other sector or business, must be developed. The perverse incentive structure in which companies have responsibilities to shareholders but not their users is reflective of similar battles about technology in the 19th and 20th century. What is happening now is regressive and harmful to children. As the IGF's agenda clearly shows, AI is a highly topical issue today and will continue to be so into 2025. So before continuing, I want to dispel some of the pervasive myths. First, AI is not new. The first mathematical model for neural networks dates back to the 1940s. The term artificial intelligence was coined in the 50s. AI systems are a continuation of algorithmic and automated systems which we have some experience of. This also means that AI is not too complicated to understand, and it is not too complicated to regulate. Secondly, not all AI is equal. Generative AI systems are different from those based solely on machine learning, and artificial general intelligence, though still theoretical for now, is wholly different again. This is important because we're increasingly seeing generative AI deployed in situations where it's either unnecessary or could be harmful, tackling tasks that could be automated through other specialist AI or even non-AI approaches that are more accurate and energy efficient. The choice of model should be based on necessity and proportionality, and we must be clear in our use of language to make sure AI remains understandable. Thirdly, AI is not the problem. Technology is generally speaking neutral, but business models and business practice is not. If tech companies seek to maximize their profit without our insisting on their observing children's rights and well-being, then they privatize the wealth and outsource the societal cost onto the shoulders of children. And I must say here that although when we say the word children, very often the image of a teenager umbilically attached to their phone comes to mind, but the children who are paying the cost are from the very youngest, pre-verbal ages, whose language and development is hindered by over-reliance on digital products. Good morning. Who increasingly I regret not being able to be with you in person at the Internet Governance Forum today. The children. This session is officially accredited as a preparatory event for the AI Action Summit, and I'm delighted that today's conversation will feed into those which will take place in Paris in February. That their lives are dominated as Nidhi and Yun will have shared, it's crucial that we develop artificial intelligence and other automated systems with one eye on how harm or loss of life at worst. Children. Finally, the possibilities and perhaps are infinite. I was very moved when I saw an AI system that in real time could monitor a preterm baby heartbeat without having to stick heavy instruments on their paper thin chest. Terre des Hommes, a fellow children's rights NGO, recently launched an AI chatbot to support children's access to justice. Or a few months ago, I met a wonderful group of 14-year-old girls who built an app to teach sign language to hearing classmates so that they could all communicate with their deaf peer. There is no doubt that AI holds immense potential. But like any technology, AI must be developed with children in mind. And I do want to emphasize that it's a design choice if recommender systems feed children alarming content promoting eating disorders or self-harm. It's a design choice if AI-powered chatbots encourage emotional attachments, which may, and connection, in some cases, have led to children taking their own lives. Earlier this year, I was delighted it's a design choice. The Alan Turing if cynic that mapped some of those the current legislative revive deceased children through the creation of AI bots, imitating their personalities, re-traumatizing their families and friends, and creating a loop in which self-harm or suicide is valorized. Their work provides as children point out to us repeatedly one of the most important projects I've been involved with over the last year, which is to build on the global consensus that children deserve our consideration, and working hand in hand with global experts right across domains and fields, we have together developed a proposal for a code of conduct for AI systems that impact on children. We will be launching the code in the coming months, and it will provide a clear and practical path forward for designing.
Dear host, I don't know if you can hear me, but if you can allow me to share my screen again, I can restart the playback.
I'm so sorry. It seems to be either a choice between online people being able to see and hear and us being able to see and hear. Why don't we give that a moment? I think there were some questions, at least the ones from the room. I'm not sure about the ones online at the moment, but let's come to that and see if we can get the end of Baroness Kidron's intervention in a minute. Jutta, you had a question or a point to make.
Yes, Jutta Koll from the German Digital Opportunities Foundation. I had the honor to work with Five Rights Foundation in the working group on General Comment number 25. And I really appreciate what we heard from Biben, also what we heard from Ansgar. But at the same time, I'm a bit disillusioned because I think it's 10 to 12 years ago when we really talked to tech companies about the concept of safety by design. And that was, although we had artificial intelligence at that point of time, it was not in the hands of the children in the real way. So I would have expected that this principle would be in the standards, would be in the hands of developers to be adhered to and to take in consideration that children, it was obvious throughout all the developments. I would say when the internet came up, it was not designed for children. So it was, maybe we were then going behind that and say, okay, now we have this idea of safety by design. Have in mind that children probably will be users of the services, of the devices and so on. And now we end up several years ago with AI and the same situation that we had before with other technology, digital technology. Ansgar, maybe you have an answer to that, not to disillusion me?
I fear that my answer is not going to be something that will remove your disillusionment. The practice that we are seeing is a rush to compete, to bring things to the market. And in that rush, it remains the case that the so-called functional requirements, that is to say, the things that need to be there in order to produce the type of output that they want to create, get the prominent sort of the investment, and the so-called non-functional, this terminology is terrible, requirements such as making sure that there will not be negative consequences, especially to specific groups, are marginalized in the design process unless there is a significant factor behind it, such as the risk of a huge fine. That is why, even though we've seen discussions around responsible AI principles for many years, there was always a lack of investment to really get it implemented. There was often a case of technologists within the company saying this is something that we should be doing, but they were not being given the resources to actually do it. Until now, there is something like an AI Act where if you don't do it, you're going to face fines. Now suddenly there is an investment in doing it.
This is okay? It was your voice. Okay, maybe we'll get Baroness Kidron back and also our other speakers online. But in the meantime, oh, wonderful, we can hear. I hope that's current and not right from the beginning when they couldn't hear. But in the meantime, do we have any other questions or comments from the room? Otherwise, I will go to ones online too. And I have to say, Jutta, I totally agree with you. It's taking far too long. And as I said a bit before, it's a little bit disingenuous because we do know what the issues are and we've known for a long time. Let's go over to Lena.
Yeah, thanks so much. And it's just such good work that you're all doing.
For the AI Action Summit, and I'm delighted that today's conversation
How about this
will
one?
feed into those which will take place in Paris in February. As Nidhi and Yun will have shared, it's crucial that we develop artificial intelligence and other automated systems with one eye on how it will impact children.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I also feel as though we've known the issues for a long time, and the only time that the tech companies have changed is when they face fines or penalties or litigation. And I'm just curious because there's people from other countries in the room as well, and I'm wondering, Five Rights has been doing some work globally. You know, are we seeing the same conclusions in terms of the ability of other countries to...
can just talk without the microphone in the room.
Very convenient, but easily being hacked. Where are you from? I'm originally here, and actually I'm neuroscientist, neurocognitive brain science. Okay. They are a little bit diverted for new AI applications. Oh, great. Anyway, but this is a big because I'm more into the future. Big.
Do use the microphone though, because otherwise they can't hear you online.
No, it's I was no.
No, I was just curious to hear if there was others in the room who were also finding similar issues. Is there a sense from other countries that they also need to get in line and have some really robust regulation, like we heard from the experience in Europe? It's just an invitation for others online or in the room. The work that I do is also aligned with Five Rights with the Council on Tech and Social Cohesion. It's trying to regulate the upstream design features that lead to these kinds of harms and also polarization.
Thank you so much, Lena. I'm so sorry because I was only half listening, and afterwards you're going to tell me that again because I think I want to know. Does anyone or else, we also have online our speakers, Jun and Nidhi. If you'd like to come back on anything that you have heard, please wave or put something in the chat, and then I will see it and bring you in. Otherwise, is there anything else from the room? I have a question online. Okay, so I have a question online from Dorothy Gordon from UNESCO, who's asking how involved are consumer rights organizations in working to get major tech companies to stop abusing children's rights in this way? I believe we need consumers to deliberately avoid using dangerous products. So that's public awareness and almost boycotting, I guess, or consumer organizations can do other things like submitting complaints and things. Ansgar, do you want to take that?
I'm afraid the only part that consumer rights organizations are doing in this space that I can really speak to is that, yes, we do have, at least in Europe when it comes to the standardization for the AI Act, we do have participation by the consumer rights organization, ANEC, in helping to make sure that consumer concerns are taken into consideration as these standards are being developed. And this is a very valuable contribution by a non-industry player. I am not aware as to the activities that are being done regarding educating users as to the impact that these types of technologies may have on them, and therefore to try to help them make a informed choice as to whether they want to use these tools. Obviously, there are NGOs that are working on these types of things as well. Mozilla every year has before Christmas some activities around which digital tools may be spying on you, etc. But they will only reach a particular subsection of a population who are genuinely already interested in this space. I imagine this is a space where we also need support from public sector to do larger public interest campaigns to help people better understand this. Who has the resources to reach the whole population as opposed to only people who already are looking for this kind of information? I think that is going to be a big question.
Thank you, Ansgar. I'm going to take the liberty of going slightly lower tech and giving you some of Biban's remarks that I have here so that we don't miss everything and so that the people online can hear them too. I'm sorry it's not in her voice, which is far more eloquent than mine. I'm going to jump in a little bit halfway through. I think we all heard the beginning. But her main points. Firstly, AI is not new. The first mathematical model for neural networks dates back to 1943, and the term artificial intelligence was coined in 1955. AI systems are merely a continuation of algorithmic and automated systems which we all have experience with. This also means that AI is not too complicated to understand, and it is certainly not too complicated to regulate. Secondly, AI is not unitary. Generative AI systems are different from those based on machine learning and artificial general intelligence. Though still theoretical for now, is wholly different. Generative AI is currently deployed in situations where it is unnecessary, tackling tasks that could be automated through other specialized AI or even non-AI approaches which are more accurate and energy efficient. The choice of model should be based on necessity and proportionality. And we must be clear in our use of language to make sure AI remains understandable. Thirdly, AI is not the problem. As I've said before, technology carries opportunities and risks, and these risks can continue to exist because tech companies seek to maximize profit at the expense of children's rights and well-being. Trying again? Oh, wonderful. They have privatized the wealth of technology and outsourced the cost to society. I'm actually going to repeat that because I think it's such an important sentence. So tech companies have privatized the wealth of technology and outsourced the cost to society. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, all this shows that AI is not different from previous technologies. Industry lobbies seek to sow doubt and uncertainty to keep authorities from effectively legislating and to prevent citizens from demanding effective legislation. We must not tolerate AI exceptionalism, right? I think that's another very important point. AI is a business. This is businesses we're talking about. It's no secret that adults have so far failed to provide children with a rights-respecting online environment. As AI is not different from previous technologies, the same will happen if we do not act immediately. This is why, over the past year, building on global consensus and working hand in hand with global experts in the field, we have developed an AI code for children. Launching the code in the coming months will provide a clear and practical path forward for designing, deploying, and governing AI systems, taking into account children's rights and needs. It's an important and necessary correction to the persistent failure to consider children, and a vital blueprint for delivering on the commitments to children in the Global Digital Compact and in regulatory advances such as the AI Act. We need from the outset to consider how to build the rights and needs of every child into the design and governance of AI systems. The code, which we will launch at Paris, hopefully, will be for anyone who designs, adapts, or deploys an AI system that impacts children. It is practical, actionable, adaptable, and applicable to all kinds of AI systems. It mandates certain expertise and actions and raises questions designed to reveal gaps and risks. It leaves a level of autonomy to find sufficient mitigation measures. It is intended to support existing regulatory initiatives and provide a standard for those jurisdictions that are considering introducing new legislation or regulation. In the Global Digital Compact, all governments agreed on the urgent need to assess and address the potential impact, opportunity, and risks of artificial intelligence systems on the well-being and rights of individuals. That's a quote. Children represent 1/3 of internet users and are early adopters of technology and have unique rights and vulnerabilities. They must be at the center of our discussions and considerations. I hope I didn't misquote any of that or that she didn't change it in the final version, but you can always quote me because I agree with all of that. I think putting children at the center of the conversation maybe means that in the last few minutes I'd like to go back to Nidhi, if that is okay with you. Nidhi, are you still with us? Could you bring Nidhi up, please? Okay, I don't think our tech people are listening to me again. Could you bring Nidhi, the speaker Nidhi? Nidhi, if you're with us, I'd love to hear your reflections. You talk to, hello again, not only your peers and colleagues all the time, but also our big group of child ambassadors within Five Rights. What are the conclusions that you draw from this, and what are maybe some of the things that you think that you and your colleagues would like to tell us and for us to take forward? Can't hear you yet. Oh, Nidhi, can we hear you now?
Yes, hello, can you hear me? Thank you so much, Leanda. That's such an interesting question. And as Five Rights Youth Ambassadors, we often discuss the opportunities and the risks of AI, especially for children and young people. While we see its potential, there are often obviously some key concerns that stand out to us. So one major issue is education. AI can make tasks like research and homework quicker, but it risks taking away from essential learning skills. As one of my peers put it, it's making homework easier, but at what cost to our learning? And we worry a lot about losing creativity and critical thinking, skills we'll need later on in life. Another significant concern is privacy. AI systems can analyze so much about us, even from just a photo or a message. One ambassador shared how AI is amazing and how it can help us, but it's also scary how much it knows about us. Many of us feel uncomfortable with how much information we're unknowingly sharing, especially when we're not informed about how it's being used, like how I mentioned earlier during my first intervention. We've also talked a lot about the psychological risks of AI. Systems designed for companionship, for example, might seem helpful, but in the long term have a lot of consequences. As one of our ambassadors said, it's about more than just technology. It's kind of about our values. Relying on machines that mimic empathy could affect our real world social skills, especially for vulnerable young people. And of course, there's the growing threat of deepfakes. Marco, one of our youth ambassadors, summed it up well by saying that AI tools are developing and deepfakes are becoming scarier, and it can ruin people's online footprint. So to sum it up, while AI brings immense opportunities, it's these educational, ethical, and privacy-related risks that concern us the most. And it's crucial that AI systems are designed to protect young people with a lot of safeguards that prioritize our rights and well-being.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
so much, Nidhi. It's always wonderful to hear from you and from your fellow youth ambassadors. I hope that the code that we'll bring out is something that will serve you. But we are going to get your direct feedback, of course, on it very soon. We really hope that that you will find some of the elements there to address some of the things that you have that you have brought up. We have 2 minutes to go, and we have had a very eventful session, I would say. But I don't know, Jun, if you're online, if you want to come back with any closing words.
Hi, Liana. Can you still hear me all right?
We can.
Oh, fabulous, fantastic. And what a fabulous session. I tried to come in a few times and I think it got confused a few times when we were trying to manage the video and hybrid attention. And what I just want to really try to come in is about two things: the discussion about safety by design and parents' role in all of this safeguarding children. I think I agree with Ansgar's point. I think we are definitely moving towards the right positive direction, but it's a really challenging domain. I know there are a lot of Gen AI companies are embracing the safety by design principles and trying to integrate that really actively in their design and development process now, which is really encouraging to see that. It's especially they're taking that perspective from children. But it's very complex because the risks are quite diverse. I agree with what Aska said. Some of the companies may not be aware of some of the risks for children, but I think some of them do. But at the same time, there's a challenge because the diverse risks, some of them may not seem having direct impacts or immediate safety risks for children. Like some of the risks that Nadine raised, like exploitations, manipulations, they may not seem having any immediate harm, but they are harmful nevertheless. So it will be quite interesting to see in the next couple of years when the EU AI Act, as well as many other acts come into place, how all this understanding about various forms of risks and harms are going to fare out in the legislation enforcement, and how we can all work together to facilitate better awareness, better translation from policies into practical guidance, so we can create a better AI world for our children and our society as a whole. And I think that's all I got to say, Liana. I hope that way we can finish on a positive note and something exciting for us to look forward to in 2025.
So much, Jen. Indeed, there remain outstanding questions, but as you have said, there's still plenty going on. We do have 2025, lots of things that we can deliver on, and I think I would just like to reference maybe at the end that in the UN framework, and we're here under the UN's umbrella, governing AI for humanity, there was a very, very clear point, which is that AI must not be experimenting on children. AI might be, in some ways, some aspects of it, we might be using it in new and novel ways. But we can innovate all we want, but this is something where we know that our children are too precious and grow up too fast, and their education, as you said, Nidhi, even impacting your education. We're talking about, the generations on the future. We must not be experimenting on children, and this is what we will take to the Paris summit with all of this input. And we hope that all online and in the room, you will come behind us and have a look at this code and see how it can be bettered, improved, so that it can deliver on these issues for kids. Thank you so much. I'd like you all to join me in thanking our panelists for this very rich discussion. I'm very grateful for your patience in particular. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for